There we go. Thank you. So if I seem a bit clumsy doing this, it's because I am simply chair by default right now, and we'll manage anyway. So this is the March 13th, 2024 meeting of the local planning agency of the city of Dunedin. We will now come to order. The local planning agency is an advisory board appointed by the city commission. This board is composed of volunteers who represent the thought and concerns of the community. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to make recommendations to the city's commission regarding each item on the agenda. Tonight we will be conducting public hearings, therefore this meeting is open to the public. Anyone in the audience who wishes to give testimony to any items on the agenda will need to be sworn in by the deputy city clerk. This swearing-in process will occur after tonight's first agenda item, which will be approval of the minutes from the last local planning meeting. Please be aware that the local planning agency is not a quasi-judicial board and therefore has no final decision-making power. Our procedures, however, are structured in a quasi-judicial manner for the benefit of those who come before it. Tonight's format will be as follows. I will introduce each item on the agenda, after which the city representative will present information about it. Thereafter, the members of the local planning agency will respond to the city representative. Finally, anyone from the public may come forward. Those from the public wishing to give testimony will need to approach the dais, identify themselves, and then utilize the speaker's lectern in order for their comments to be recorded. Upon conclusion of each public hearing, the local planning agency will consider the evidence before it and will vote on the agenda item. That voice vote is the rendition of the order of the board, and there will be no written decision issued by the board. The first item on tonight's agenda is approval of the August 9th, 2023 LPA minutes. Are there any corrections, additions, or deletions to the minutes? No. Hearing none, do I hear a motion to accept the minutes as submitted?
I make a motion to approve the minutes as submitted.
It's been moved, well, second. Thank you. It's been moved and second to accept the minutes as submitted. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The minutes stand approved as submitted. All right. The clerk will now swear in persons wishing to speak or give testimony to any of tonight's agenda items.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear the testimony you are about to give in this proceeding is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
The second item on our agenda tonight is application DR 23-03. Has anyone had ex parte communications regarding this application? Thank you. Hearing none, let's hear from our city representatives.
Good evening, Chair, members of the board. George Kinney on behalf of the Community Development Department. I'm actually going to turn the presentation over to Joseph DePasqua, who prepared the report for this evening. And certainly if you have any questions after that presentation, please let us know. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Again, Joseph DePasqua, on behalf of Community Development. So what I'd like to do is walk you through a PowerPoint presentation I prepared based upon the staffing you've received, and it was a voluminous amount of information, but I'm going to walk you through our staff analysis. This is certainly representative of all city staff, not just the Community Development Department. Obviously, these proposals get reviewed by various areas. So I'll start with an application overview. The application number is, again, DR 23-03. It's a design review approval request. The project name at this point is just 265 Causeway Boulevard. The owner and applicant are, the owner is, I assume it's JMAP or JMAP Home Builders LLC, excuse me. And the owner, the applicant is Anthony Patoras. The representative is Doug Anderson. A little bit about the property. The street address of the property is 265 Causeway Boulevard. I won't go into the details of the parcel number, but the overall area of the site is just over an acre, 1.05 acres, or roughly 46,000 square feet. The property lies within AE flood zone, which is an area of special flood hazard, with an elevation, or base flood elevation, of 10 feet. Moving to the land use, the property currently has a land use plan designation of Coastal High Hazard Area Retail and Services, abbreviated to CHHA RNS. The current zoning of the property, apologize, that seems to be a little sensitive with my hand hovering over this. The zoning of the property is TF, tourist facility, and the existing use on the property is vacant land. Moving to the project description, so the owner applicant is again looking for design review approval to build a mixed-use development on the property. The project essentially will consist of 4 new buildings, and some other amenities, and I'll describe each of those. So you have 2 residential buildings, each with 4 townhomes for a total of 8 units. These will be 3-story buildings with 2 floors of living over rooftop and rooftop patios over ground floor parking. A third building is a 3-story mixed-use building. It'll have 4 townhomes, and it'll also have a roughly 1,800 square foot winery component. The 4 townhomes will be 2 floors of living area and a rooftop patio, again over ground floor parking. And the winery is 2 floors, including ground floor parking and a rooftop patio. There will be a 4-story, 7-room hotel building. This is 3 floors of guest rooms over ground floor parking. And the additional amenities include some surface parking outside the footprints of the buildings, a swimming pool, and a cabana. The property history. So this property, some of you, if you've been around a while, you may know that it used to be the home of a restaurant and lounge. It was built in 1986. It was roughly 7,000 square feet. It was about a 190-seat restaurant. Operated for a number of years with a number of names. As you can see, Louisiana Seafood Company. We found records of quite a bit of history of names there. But ultimately, that building was demolished in 2005, and the property has remained vacant ever since. Back in 2015, the previous property owner did get final City Commission approval to do a project out there, a residential project called Arcadia Luxury Condominiums. This was going to be a 16-unit condominium development. It was going to be basically a 5-story structure, parking with 4 floors of condominiums above, 4 units per floor, and then it was also going to have some surface parking outside the footprint of the building, as well as a swimming pool. But as you, obviously everybody knows, we're sitting here this evening, the project never came to fruition, and ultimately the current property owner purchased the property early last year. So that essentially that design review approval expired. It never got even to full permitting. Moving to our land use plan evaluation. So this is where, as you know, you look at density and intensity. What can be allowed? Zoning does not drive density intensity. Land use plan does. And with the land use plan that's currently on the property, the CHHA RNS, you've got a series of ways you calculate density and intensity. And so for the 3 uses being proposed, this table breaks those out. The first one is the townhomes. Townhomes they use 15 dwelling units an acre. That's what this land use allows. And what this table is meant to do is with each of the uses and the proposed size or density of them, you can see how much land is being encumbered by each one of those. And certainly you can see that it adds up to 1.05 acres when you look at the amount of land needed for 12 townhomes, a 7-room hotel, and a roughly 1,800 square foot winery. being a non-residential use. So you do have compliance between what the land use allows for density and floor area ratio, which is intensity, and what the project is being proposed. Then we move to our zoning, and in Dunedin, zoning is more about the dimensional standards, the dimensional standards of the structures themselves and the size of the property. So in this case, we have tourist facility being being the zoning. Our zoning does allow, as far as the stories, does allow 5 stories maximum. The proposed is a 3 and 4 stories. One will be a 4-story building. The other ones will be 3-story buildings. The maximum building height in TF is 50 feet, and you can see the most of the buildings are a little over 47.25 feet. And that's the hotel is the larger of the 2 buildings, and then the other buildings are just under 46 feet in height. You can see the front setbacks, 25-foot minimum, and that is allowed to be amended based, and I'll get to that in a minute. They've amended it along the frontage. Side setbacks are 10, and you do have 10 on each, and there is technically no rear. You may have seen this in previous cases, but when you have 2 frontages in Dunedin, you have essentially a primary front, a secondary front. The other 2 property lines are considered sides. So in this case, you do not have a rear property line. Moving back to the front setback, the applicant can, using some techniques, and I've detailed those in the staffing, by moving your parking and your access around away from the public view and sort of screening it, you're allowed to reduce your front setback up to 0. They've reduced it along Causeway to 3 feet. And so that is contemplated as a footnote, and you'll see it on page 5 of the staffing if you'd like to refer to it, in support of the principles of doing that, pulling it to the street, putting parking screened around the rear, and providing that as part of your design, you can reduce the front setback. And you're creating more of a relationship between the building and the right-of-way. So they've done that. The other area of zoning I'll talk about as far as is building height. So we do have supplemental height regulations. The first one being additional multiple stories. And in this particular location, there is a requirement to do a step back above the 2nd floor if you go greater than 2 stories. And a lot of times that's referred to as sort of the Christmas cake effect. You go up a certain height, then you have to step it back. And that is to, I'll say, combat, for lack of a better term, the building's overall impression on the right-of-way. In this instance, they've opted to go step back above the 1st floor, sort of further reducing that impression. So it goes, after the 1st floor, the building steps back 10 feet before it goes up 2 more floors. And so that certainly is in the spirit of what we're looking for that supplemental height regulation. And that refers to the buildings A and B, which are the 2 that front Causeway Boulevard. And then the final point about modifying height, we do have a caveat in our code that allows certain elements of a building to go above the maximum height. And in this case, that it's 20% of the maximum allowable height, so 20% of 50 feet. You're allowed to have certain architectural elements and parts of buildings that can go above that. So in this case, you do have the hotel building does have the elevators and the stair enclosures that do go 6 feet above that, which is allowed specifically in our code. So that's another area where they've met that additional condition. The next area I'd like to talk about is our compatibility requirement that we have in our comprehensive plan. It's Objective 2.9. It's in our future land use element, and it requires that any development, we look at the surrounding land and its uses and see how compatible the proposed project is to what's going on around it, both in the built environment as well as any vacant uses and what could be built on those. So, as I'm sure you saw from your backup, we examined all the properties around from an overall density, meaning the number of dwelling units per acre. If it was non-residential, we provided a floor area ratio, and we gave you an overall impression of the number of units and the sizes of those properties so you could understand the scale. And we did provide a Google aerial where you can see each of those identified along with this property, and the idea to show you the area we're evaluating. And so our overall existing buildings in the area vary from 1 story to 9 stories. So there's a very broad range of building sizes. And there is a mix of uses from low to high, high density condominiums, townhomes, and multifamily, as well as some retail and some office and some commercial recreation. And of course, the marina next door being a water dependent use. So you really do have a mix of uses as you'd expect on the causeway. In totality, looking at all the information that's been provided in your backup and with all the exhibits, the staff has determined that a 3 or a 4-story mixed use at the proposed density and intensity on this property, together with what's going on around it, does comply with the, and is consistent with our compatibility requirements and our comprehensive plan. So that's the conclusion that staff reached. And then this is basically a list of all the areas that are examined by staff as part of the design review. This is essentially the criteria that's looked at when you do apply for design review here in the city of Dunedin. We do look at and I can certainly go into detail on these. I won't do that because I know you have that in your backup. But just for the record, I want to point out that we're looking at common open space, circulation and mobility of the site, parking, loading, and stacking on the site, that the off-street parking has been met, at least the minimum that's required by code, buffers and screening, fences and walls, architectural style, which, as you know, this has to go through one of our architectural styles, sustainability, because you do have to meet some minimum standards, and they've done that, and they actually exceeded it by a significant amount, sign regulations, public art, our parkland impact fee, which applies to new residential dwelling units, citizen participation. They did have to have a citizen participation meeting, and they did hold that. We provided that backup as well for you. Traffic impact analysis to look at the proposed impact the site would bring traffic counts-wise, and there's a series of requirements that have to be met when you meet certain thresholds. And then our levels of service. And level of service is basically the city's ability to provide water, wastewater, stormwater, and trash, solid waste, things that will be able to provide and service the property. Does the city have adequate capacity to do that? And so we provided all that information to you, and staff has reviewed that, both not just our area, but others, and have determined that the project as proposed is compliant with all those conditions and requirements. Some of our committee actions, this project was originally brought to our DRC about a year ago. It was originally, that is the normal first step with any development project. The applicant gets those upfront comments from all the technical staff. That review happened. Generally, that kicks the ball off as far as getting into a design review application where we are today. And all the comments that were provided during that meeting and subsequent have been addressed in the conditions of approval, and so staff is comfortable from all areas at this point. And of course, the other part is the Architectural Review Committee. The applicant did choose to go to a preliminary review back in March of last year, and then did a formal review in February of this year, where they had incorporated a lot of the information, I believe, from the first meeting. I'll certainly let the design team from the applicant talk in greater detail about that, but when they brought it back in February, they made a second formal presentation. The ARC did approve the design unanimously with several comments and suggestions for their team to consider, and I'm sure they'll talk about with those elements with you this evening. So having said this, staff finds that application DR 2303 for design review is consistent with the applicable review criteria for approval, subject to the following. These are standard conditions we place on all design reviews. And I'll just summarize those real quickly. The applicant has to meet all of our regulations. If they do get city commission approval, they'd have to come meet all of our criteria. The construction plans have to be consistent with what's ultimately approved by the city commission, and that there's an expiration in our code that they're made aware of, that 12 months from the final commission approval, they have to get their what's called site infrastructure approval, as well as building permits for the vertical buildings. I will point out that the applicant does have the ability during that 12-month period to request of the city manager one 6-month extension that can be granted. So you could be looking at, just for the record, it could go out 18 months. And with that, I'm just going to stop there, and certainly we're available to answer any questions you may have about any of the staffing that was provided.
I've got two questions for you.
Yes, sir.
The 3-foot setback, does that include the sidewalk?
No, so typically, this is from your property line. The sidewalk is going to be out on the public right-of-way.
Got it, okay. And my second question has to do with the winery. At the citizen meetings, there was a question raised, is it going to be a winery or not? And that seemed to be not clear. Can we clarify that?
I think the applicant probably can speak to that.
Okay.
That's what they've identified on the drawings. I will say this, the winery, for the purpose of just, and I'll say that just kind of for the record, the winery is really a retail commercial use. So from our perspective, any retail commercial use would be okay. So you could replace it with something else. I'm not suggesting they are, but should they choose to, they would be able to replace it with another retail commercial use that may very well be maybe a better option. So we don't really look at the word winery necessarily. We were looking really at retail commercial
Okay,
as part of our staff analysis. I just want to kind of point that out, but I'll defer to the applicant.
thank you. Shall we hear from the applicant? And are there any questions from anybody here?
I do have a question on I found it very interesting on the de minimis, because actually, I have never understood why it is not a cumulative effect, because you can take one little property and say, well, this is 51. Then you take another property, you have an 8 and a 9, you have 1 story, you have a 2. What is the cumulative effect? And I think somehow it's logical that we look at a cumulative effect of traffic impact. And in here, you did say, well, maybe we need to address the traffic impact more. I read it thoroughly. So I think I'm also a little concerned about the 3 feet. Got you. Do you have a 5-foot sidewalk? How big is your sidewalk?
I don't really know what size. I'm guessing it's 5 or 6 feet. I could
Okay, so
probably.
if you have a 5-foot sidewalk, 3 feet is this big. That's very, very close to me. And we have done, I know it's the new urbanism, and we have done other properties in Dunedin that we put very close, and that didn't always work out. I mean, I will tell you. I also I was curious about the green space, because I read in here it's 31%, or 31% green space, so which would be a third, correct, of the entire 1.05 acres, correct?
Correct.
So can you show me how you came up with that calculation?
So, I'll let the applicant kind of speak to it. What I can tell you is that comes right off the green space plan. So if you look at the one that's labeled GP1, I believe it's on the top of that page.
Okay, but the bottom line is, I thought the architecture was very nice looking. I had no issue. I know ARC really went through the architecture. I'm not sure about the winery. Not that I don't like wine. So, but, I wasn't sure about that usage. I didn't think it was really clear either about, I saw some people said, well, maybe we'll have a convenience store there, or, a different usage. In this, I think you called it, what is that called? What did you call it? The ACHH, whatever?
CHHARNS is land use.
Right, land use. Are they required to have a retail in there?
So it has to be, the land use contemplates a mixed use.
I know the hotel is retail, right? That's not just for the J's. Is that correct?
I'll let them speak to the model for the hotel, but a hotel would be considered a commercial element. the winery, or if it were to be something else, that would also be a commercial element, which is what the land use calls for, a mix of residential and commercial.
Okay. So you almost, but the hotel is commercial, correct?
Correct.
So then you added another retail usage, although you could do with one, is that correct?
So the site needs to be a mix, and what they proposed is the mix that the land use really needs. Is you really can't have a straight residential site, and so what you've got proposed here is a commercial, you have a hotel, which is a commercial component, you have a commercial retail component, you do have residential, but in tourist facility, you can also have short-term vacation rentals, which are a commercial component. So you have an opportunity here to have kind of a good blend of all, and that's really what that's what the land, and that's what I'm getting at, that's what the land use calls for, a commercial component with residential as well.
And then I read through the other articles and of the public meeting, and they were saying, well, maybe we could use some green space for a dog park, because everybody, I guess, is scrounging to try to find land other than their neighbor's land for dog park areas. So those are my comments. Again, I know the attorney's probably going to gavel me down, but I don't understand, and I don't think it's logical that you keep saying, well, this is de minimis, when it should be a cumulative effect, particularly on that Gary Circle, which goes, like that. That's my thoughts.
I have a question on the sidewalk as well. Do you know what the plan is when they reconstruct the bridge? Because right now, the bicycling is all on that south side sidewalk. And I agree the sidewalk feels narrow. I bike this a lot, and if I've got that wall there for those little patio spaces, that seems pretty narrow given how many walkers walk with their dogs, aren't really paying attention. There's not really much margin for error. You're either into the wall or into the road if there's a problem. How wide is that? And with the new bridge, is that still going to be the main sidewalk for pedestrians and bicycle traffic?
We did not ask the county about the bridge configuration. What I can tell you is the applicant may be able to speak to a lot of this stuff, because you're asking really stuff about their project. But I did point out that anything they do in that right-of-way, they have to get a county permit from. And my assumption would be the county's not going to authorize them to do anything that doesn't really comport with what they have in the future with their bridge improvements. I got to believe those two are going to probably tie together at some point.
Okay.
Let's hear from the representative.
Good evening. My name is Rod Coleman, architect with SDG Architecture, representing the project this evening. We're pleased to bring this to the LPA because it's going to be in the same quality plane as we have accomplished with Oak Pen project at New York and Maine, and also Mira Vista 1 and 2 at Wilson and Broadway, and of course now the J Hotel also going up. It's pretty much the same team doing all the projects. And this project in particular is different because it is a mixed use. And some of the concerns, do we have a PowerPoint that we can run through?
I don't have the ability to
Okay.
plug anything else in, so I can forward it for you if you'd like. Just ask me when.
Well, let me just see if I can answer some of the questions. So the parking, we do have an overage on our parking. The residential components, for example, are required to have 2, but we have 4 for each residence. And then the commercial hotel has 7, which is required. And then the winery has their own required spaces as well. Now, we do have 5 extra spaces on site that are open for any of the uses to use. The green space, we do have a dog walk, and I believe that showed up on the green space plan, which I don't know if we have a copy of that or not.
It was provided in the backup. I don't know if you provided it, though.
And the setback, the 3-foot setback is to a low wall, and then the building itself, the first level, is another 2 feet behind that. So it's actually a 5-foot setback to the building, only at the first level, and then it jumps back another 10 feet at the second level. And we have some images that we can show that a little bit clearer for you. Yeah, just keep forwarding. Now, this is an overall example. It shows the project site up on Causeway Boulevard with the entire Gary Circle. And as you can see, there seem to be quite a few parking spaces or parking on Gary Circle at the south end. And we're not going to be impacting any of that space. There are open spaces in the marina parking as well. Oops. That's okay. Let's just there's your dog walk over by the recreation area that has the pool, and the 5 additional parking spaces in that would be the southwest corner of the property. And there is space behind Building C as well. That's a 10-foot setback. And so, like we mentioned earlier, there is 30% green space to be used for those functions. Go ahead, go through. Just some raw elevations. We can keep going, Joey. Just wanted to, here's some of the details that we went through very carefully with the ARC in both meetings. And the design is coastal vernacular and much to the same quality plane as we have in other projects. The J Hotel is another example, which is just east of this property. And you can see the straight-on elevations. The lower right-hand corner of the west entry, that's off of Gary Circle looking east. You can see the pool to the right, the dog walk area behind the pool. Dumpster enclosure. We work very closely with solid waste, make sure that we can get our business taken care of there. The building C, whoops, go back. Yeah, lower left image, building C view east. The upper left is the view of the J, and that's quite a ways back. That's in the southeast corner of the property. That upper right is the straight-on view of the hotel portion of the mixed use. Here are some views of some of the other features of the properties that we went over with the ARC. You can see some of the rooftop amenities, the patio areas. You can see in the lower right-hand corner the sidewalk and the green space, low wall, and the first floor building, and then 10-foot step back. That's a little detail shot in the lower right-hand corner of the patio at the street level. And this just merely shows some of the color selections that we reviewed with the ARC. The upper right, the amenities picture clearly shows that dog walk area. And this is a street view looking southwest as you're going out towards the park. You can see the hotel on the left is set back past the driveway between the residential buildings. little vignette in the lower right-hand corner is the existing as it is today. This view is looking southeast as you're leaving the causeway. Gary Circle on your right, and then the lower vignette again is as it is exists today. Here's a little more detailed shot of the setback. You can see that the low building wall is essentially 10 feet off of the property line, and then your 10-foot setback. So I think that walkway is probably about 6 feet. It is a spur of the trail, and I think the county widened that. I think it may have been 4 feet at one time. This is off of Gary Circle. Again, you can see our pool and amenity area, the exit driveway. The rooftop elements, some of those may have some solar components. We did that on Mira Vista, which provided 100% solar for those residential units. Some more detailed shots of the amenities. Thank you. Any questions?
Can you say more about the plans for the winery? Is it going to be a
Winery,
winery? Is it not going
You
to
know,
be a
there's,
winery?
there's nobody really selected yet to be that tenant, but the thoughts for the winery, if that's what it should be, it would be like a bottle shop. They have bottles of wine for sale,
Ah, I see.
and of course, you can have a tasting if you need or would like, but primarily you buy the bottle and take it out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, and the concern was that it become a liquor store.
No,
No, then that will not happen. Is it?
I don't believe a retail liquor store, nobody wants to spend the money for that license cost.
I hear you.
Yeah,
That winery does have a patio above
there is.
the second floor, correct?
Yeah, and that patio could actually be used by anybody. If one of the residents want to use it, you're passing by on your bicycle on the trail, you want to stop in, grab a bottle of water, you can go up there and rest.
So it's really
So
a
it's a
wine
public asset.
store, not a winery.
Yeah, it's semantics.
So you don't access that patio through the winery store?
Yes,
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, you might have
So
to
your
buy.
access as a pedestrian on the sidewalk?
Yeah, you might
is
want to buy
subject
something
going
on
to
the way
winery.
up to sit there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Other questions?
Just a question on the, so it looks like on the condominiums, it's similar to Mira Vista where you've got the two deep and there's a garage door and then two
Yep.
covered open parking
Yep.
spots essentially? That's the four you were talking about?
That's correct. Yeah, they're all under the buildings.
Yeah.
And we do have 5 additional on the property that can be used by either the residents or the winery or even the hotel.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Sure. Comments from the public? Oh, okay.
Good evening. My name's Doug Anderson, 1413 Bayshore Boulevard, Unit Number 6 in Dunedin. And I'm part of this project in that we will be the general contractors building it. We are not the developer. But as part of this worked out, we had a need when we got the J Hotel approved by the city. It's a few rooms short of what the team needs at certain times during the year. So when the joint use came up and that made itself available, we were able to get 7 more rooms to the hotel that will be important to the team during the time of the year that they have all of their players here. So the project's going to be built with insulated concrete form construction, which is pretty indestructible on its own. It's going to be very similar. It's the same kind of design of Mira Vista, Phase 1 and Phase 2. The concept is the same. The materials are the same, but the big difference between this one and that one is this one is 100% solar powered. It's completely sustainable. So these buildings have enough solar array on top that it'll cover majority, if not all, their electrical needs. So I wanted to address that part of the J. That's why we did that. 7 rooms, and I know that it would be very beneficial to the team at the right times of the year that they need them. And does anybody have any other questions on the construction type? Thank you very much.
Thank you. The public is invited to speak. Is there anyone that wants to?
Chair, if I may just state for the
Please.
record, we did receive one public comment via mail, and it has been, you all have received it in your agenda packet. It will be made part of the record.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jerry Depkowski. I live at 2539 Gary Circle, about 200 feet from the project. Been a resident there for about 15 years, so understand the history of that project, et cetera. My first time here, I thought there'd be a camera that I could demonstrate my photos, but unfortunately didn't happen. So what I would like to do is, can I give this to them?
To the clerk, yeah, sure.
If you can go to the existing site plan. So my background is this year I celebrate my 45th year as a professional engineer and 45th year as a professional traffic engineer. So that's my background, is traffic engineering and safety. So what I'm passing by is the existing site plan, and I have on there numbers 1, 2, and 3. If you could kind of keep those in your memory, I'm going to talk about what those are all about. And then under the existing site plan that you showed, actually you can go to number 2. That'll be fine. So what I passed out to you in front of you is the site is empty today. It's been that way for a long, long time. But what happens is, as you're going westbound on the causeway, and if the bridge opens up, traffic backs up all the way to alternate 19. So what happens is people will find shortcuts to get out of the backup. And what I've shown on illustration number 1, that's the left turn lane to turn onto Gary Circle to get to my property. It's fine, it's short, it does its job, but what happens is the people that want to get to that lot to park their cars before this building comes, they go from spot number 1 to spot number 2. They actually are driving against eastbound traffic, going up onto the sidewalk and then parking in that lot. Since then, they put the fence up, so you can't go in there anymore. But it's always been an issue, people trying to go to driveway number 2. So my proposal is, I've read the whole staff report, excellent reporting, have no objections, but I'd like to add safety to that report. And that is, I really believe that driveway number 2 should be moved to driveway number 3. So essentially,
Which is, okay, so
He wants to move it from here to here.
to the middle.
So
That's
Jerry, are
fine.
you saying you would want to shift the one building to the east, to
what-
put the driveway between the 2 buildings?
correct. You can take one of the buildings, shift it to the east, same square footage, same drainage, same everything. It's just I moved, the easternmost driveway would be closed and moved to the west, to the center of the property, so that people can't go against the eastbound traffic to get back into the site. There's mention of a wine store. People see the
Got
sign.
another 30 seconds.
Okay. Just in closing, I really feel that their easternmost driveway should be moved to the center of the site to make it more safe. That's how we discussed the Arcadia project years ago, and the commission liked it at that time. So, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else, please?
Close that off. You would move this building down, you would have the right in, right out. This is kind of like a hammerhead.
Good evening. Please bear with me because I've had this cough for 2 months. I'll give each a copy of what I'm going to
Thank you.
say, basically.
Thank you. Do you want me to pass them down?
Good evening. My name is Dave Pauley. I live at 2598 Gary Circle, just west of the proposed development on 265 Causeway Boulevard. I must admit, aside from a few points, I'm very much in favor of the development. For years, I've looked at a vacant lot with a fence around it, upon which I always hoped a lawnmower would appear. One of the important reasons I support the development is that Doug Anderson is not the developer, but the general contractor. When Doug took on the J Hotel down the road, he did it with an open mind and listened to constructive criticism and acted, I felt, in a positive manner. With this being said, I would like to address 2 of the most pressing concerns I have heard and that I also concur with. First would be to address the front setback. The drawings show a 3-foot setback, front setback, concrete entry wall, and first floor overhang project out to that point. Our code calls for a setback of 0 to 25 feet. Around 2010, Greg Rice, Director of Planning and Development, was working on form-based codes as well as land development codes. He met several times with citizens on the Causeway and reviewed these through the LPA. In 2011, ordinances were being adapted. Thus, the land development codes became official ordinances of Dunedin. On the Causeway portion, efforts were made to control architectural design and to bring buildings closer to the street, thus the 0 to 25-foot setback. Years ago, you hardly saw pedestrian traffic on the Causeway that hardly saw what you see today. What we thought were going to be inviting buildings with pedestrians casually walking by are now sidewalks congested with walkers, bikes, and new electric bikes. The speed of the pedestrian has increased as well as the congestion. A narrow street with a crowded sidewalk and a 3-foot setback would give a canyon effect. Way out of character with the rest of Ward Island. It seems prudent from a safety and appearance standpoint to move the setback to 6 feet. A beautiful building has been designed, moving it back 3 foot, putting it more in line with the what currently exists on Ward Island would be the right choice. Just recently, 4 $1 million plus condominiums were built at 230 Causeway Boulevard, catty corner to this development, and they have a frontage setback of over 15
Sir, you've got
feet.
30 seconds.
I recently asked the LPA board to please ask the developer to strongly consider this recommendation for an overall front setback of 6 feet. Secondly, I would like to discuss the dumpster location and appearance. Proposed are a couple of fence spots in the northwest corner of the property to store trash. It would seem sensible from a marketing aspect to offer trash storage better concealed, centralized, and convenient. People paying $1 million for a condo, I don't think want to walk back too far to get rid of the trash. My father always told me if you're going to point out what is
Sir, 10
a
seconds.
problem, you better present it in a sensible manner. Okay, I would suggest the developer look at taking the garage and carport in the easternmost unit of Building A and divide it vertically. This would give, with the addition of some walls and doors, a concealed trash room containing 2 3x6 dumpsters on wheels.
Sir,
Plus-
your time is up.
Can I please finish?
Well, How much more do you have? 'Cause
Just, you've got it in front of you, not only a few more sentences. Plus a secure 9x30 bike room. The resident would have one garage and one parking space. By narrowing the green space between building A and B, you should be able to fit in another unit, possibly at building A, at the end of building A. Instead of building A, another consideration would be building B. These two spaces offer secure, convenient, and trash storage in the secure bike storage area, offering a great selling point for their sales force and the convenience of the owners. Once again, I respectfully ask the LPA to request review action by the developer concerning this issue. And you can see the attached A, what I'm talking about.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak?
Hello, I'm John Closter, 1160 Fairway Drive, Fairway Estates. I've been a resident in Dunedin for 27 years. I frequent the Causeway daily, and I am all for this project moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hello there. My name is Mark Maurer. I'm actually one of the owners of 2602 Bayshore Boulevard, a business. It's a fine establishment. You ought to come out and have something to eat and drink. It's Sandbar Grill.
Sir, could we get your home address for the record?
My home address?
Yeah.
4724 Simcoe Street.
Thank you.
Harvard. Thank you. Just came out, I got wind of this today, did not know what was happening. Just came out to say the same thing. I'm in favor of it, looking forward to it, bringing more residents, bringing more people, bringing more merchants to our area and coming out to spend money and keep it from going out to Clearwater Beach and everywhere else. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Hearing none, we will move on. Was there someone else?
Yeah, I've got a question. Rod,
please.
Rod, the architect, could you come up? I've got questions based on the feedback we heard tonight. Any insight from you with regards to moving one of the buildings to put this driveway in between the two buildings? Your thoughts on that? And then also any thoughts regarding increasing the setback on the building? What were the implications to the project to make changes like that? And third, the dumpster, instead of having it as an open walled thing, could it be built with a roof over it, which is what my condo, Victoria Place has, just to make it more discreet? Those three things. Any thoughts?
Well, the driveway locations are existing, and we were hoping to keep those and reuse them because it is a county road, and we would have to go through. We don't know if the county would approve relocating the driveways or not. And the dumpster location was reviewed with the solid waste, and we're using the preferred version that they desired, which is drive up with the truck. They didn't want to bring their truck on the property, and this way they can just dump in lieu of a rollout. A rollout was an option, but they preferred what we have.
Oh, so this is just back in, lift it,
Yeah,
done? Okay.
yeah.
Now, how about the setback to 6 feet instead of 3 feet? What implications would that have on the design?
Well, you can see from north to south where we would have to reduce our setbacks on the south sides to shift everything back. And I think because the portion of the building that's 5 feet off of the sidewalk, essentially, is only 1 story, and it's very incremental, the setback, and you'll see that the second level is set back another 10 feet. So I don't think there's going to be any canyon effect here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are Other questions?
I have a question. I've been thinking about this. I'm curious, what is the line of setbacks on Ward Island? Someone brought it up. I'm just very curious. What
0 to
is the
25.
usual setback on that island?
I mean, I couldn't tell you, and the reason is because you have, I think, 6 different zoning districts out there. So you're going to have varying setbacks. What I will say is the things that along the causeway, the lots that abut the causeway, typically are commercial, and they do have, when you see form-based medium, tourist facility, and neighborhood business, and those tend to have reduced setback opportunities to create that, the new urbanism feel that I think Mr. Pauly brought up, and I provided you the 2012 snippet from the original analysis of the causeway area that was done, and that led to, I think Mr. Pauly just explained it, it led to having our zoning, form-based medium was created as a result of that. I know you remember that as a commissioner. And also the caveats were there was the opportunity when you do design elements in that spirit that you can modify your setbacks from, generally speaking, within TF down 25 to 0. And then in a lot of the form-based mediums, it's 2 to 17. So those were all directly out of result of those. But to answer your original question, I would say there's probably a very mix of setbacks, depending on if it fronts causeway, if it's a newer building, an older building, or if it's facing a side street, for example.
Well, I think in this case, it's a setback that is mixed with safety, because I see the walkers, everybody that uses that path, and I don't even know how to talk about the bridge, but personally, it's not a lot of setback. And, I can say myself, I voted on things that was not a lot of setback, and I have been sad I did that. I'll be very honest. So, I have 3 things. We are not here to quash whatsoever. We're here to tweak. We only offer. We're an advisory board. We just offer our thoughts, and then it will go to the commission, and they are the board that makes the decision. But it's important that we at least see what they might want to look at. That's all we can do, is you might need to look at this. And personally, well, I guess I'm not really supposed to be that was my question. He says it's a mix. I'm telling you, new urbanism doesn't always work real close. And it is mixed with safety. For all those that walk, those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Are there other thoughts?
No, I agree with the setback. It's just a little concerning. As we get to more mixed use and trying to get more people on bicycles and out of cars and everything, that's almost a pinch point, it feels like, when you're riding a bike through there with pedestrians, especially as we grow and if there's more pedestrian traffic on there. I'd like to see if we could expand that setback a little deeper, just for a feeling of more safety for bikers and pedestrians.
Charlie?
I'm wondering about, again, the setback. When the J Hotel was being considered, there was a setback question on that also. And all of this kind of moves in with that. This is becoming an urban corridor. And I agree, it's probably going to all look like that. And some of the ones that we've already done downtown, or that have been done downtown, do feel tight. I'd like to also see it to be a little bit wider. Although I will say the feel of it, from the looks of the pictures,
It's very pretty.
looks like it's very nice. There is some grass and trees planted before you get to
Right.
the actual wall.
And it's not a straight
Which
wall.
am I wondering, is it just a 3-foot space where these trees and plants are going to be, or is it a 5-foot space, as you have mentioned?
It's actually 5 in most areas, and then where the wall juts out, it's 3. But it's a low wall for a patio area for the resident.
So it's
So it's a
3 and
combination of 3 and 5-foot setbacks? It's
The
not
wall,
just a straight 3-foot
the building
setback?
wall itself is 5, and the little decorative wall comes out another 2 feet,
Okay,
giving us a 3-foot to the wall.
thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Saying, I mean, I go there at 5 o'clock in the morning, there's not that much traffic, so. But I know exactly what you're saying is, it is becoming, especially with the J Hotel and everything, it is becoming more and more populated, and there is a lot of traffic that goes through there. I mean, the bridge is, in itself, is difficult getting across. You know, so if, with the buildings there, will you impede on the driveway by setting it back more, you know, with the, on the property there? Is that what you were trying to get, you know, when you designed it this way?
Yeah, we'd have to shift the whole thing to the south, including the driveway and including the south buildings
Okay,
and amenities. Yeah,
okay.
Thank you, sir.
you're welcome. Thank you.
one more question. What's the setback on the, you know, I get so confused with east, west, blah, blah, blah. So that is looking north on the south, where you have the J, and you have the other buildings.
Yeah,
So
that's
what's that setback to Block K? Is that?
10 feet.
Okay, there's a 10-foot behind. And
that a required
you're saying
setback?
that
Yeah,
if you took.
we're right up against it. We can't reduce that 10-foot.
They can't reduce that 10.
No, the minimum setback for the,
Because
both
then
the
they're gonna
southern
affect the
and the
people
eastern
behind
property
it.
line would be 10 feet.
But can you take 3 feet out of the driveway that goes between?
No, because that's another code requirement as far as the width of the drives.
Yeah, that has a requirement to fit the fire trucks through there, I think, if I
Right.
saw in one drawing. Is that correct?
Correct. There has to be,
Yeah.
it has to meet an auto turn movement requirement. That was provided in your backup as well.
Yeah. Yeah. We're doing everything that we can to meet the requirements of the codes.
Thank you.
Rod, just one thing, and I don't know if this is the final landscape design, but if it would help, rather than have those kind of bushes, because it really is a contingent upon how well they're kept trimmed by the landscaper, could something else be planted that has less of a
Yeah,
feel if you're biking through there,
Right.
you know, versus?
Yeah, this is not the landscape plan. It is a separate document. I don't know if you have it in your packet or not.
You do.
Do we?
It's considered the greenscape plan.
Greenscape. And that identifies the species and the locations of those different plants.
Okay.
Thanks again. Sir?
Would you mind?
Come on up.
Thank you. Do you swear the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. And if you could state your name and record.
Walter Panaccio, 451 Maravin Drive.
And
I
what's your
just
name
wa-
again?
Walter Panaccio, 451 Maravin Drive. I just wanted to state, as someone who frequents the causeway daily as well, I'm up and down there walking, and sometimes I take my RV, park it for the afternoon, and then I just spend the day enjoying the beach. I go by the site a lot. Right now, it's worse. It's got a chain link fence that is on a 0 lot line. So it's been that way for 15 years. So while 3 foot isn't much, I believe it's an improvement over what I bike by. I have an electric bike, and when I bike by it, it's going to be an improvement from where we are today, even on the current site plan, and you probably know that if you're biking all the time. I just want to state that because I'm thinking, I know it's maybe not as much as everybody wants, but for the last 15 or whatever years that it's been sitting vacant, it's been in a worse scenario than what we're talking about today.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for that perspective.
We are closing public comment, and the chair will entertain a motion regarding application DR 23-03.
Chair, is your motion to approve?
I am asking for a
No, he
motion.
wants a motion.
Okay, either or.
Well, I'd make a motion, but my motion would say, I would say to put this on the record, and the commission can take it up, to continue to look at the setback, even if you could move it a foot or whatever. I would still continue to look at that setback. I would, and as it said in here, this can be readdressed. I would continue to look at the traffic impacts. And, you know, I think that the commission should consider that move to the, it would be to 2, move that between,
Move 2 to 3,
Right,
the entry
moving
from
the
2 to
driveway.
3.
moving the driveway to the center of those 2 buildings. I mean, he is a traffic engineer planner, and that does make better safety sense in my mind. These are some of the things I would say to the commission. Here's some discussion, we're on these items.
So Deborah, do you have a motion to accept or reject?
I would accept with the conditional, to the conditions to look at, to continue to look at the setback as to whether it can be broadened any. I would look again at reviewing the traffic impacts, and I would certainly look at moving the interlane to the middle of the buildings. That's my motion.
But your motion is to accept it with
Except with
those-
conditions, with 3
Yes,
conditions.
Yes. Is there a second to that?
I'll second that.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed? The motion is passed as accepted. Thank you. Our next order of business is to elect a chair and a vice chair of the local planning agency for this year. We'll wait for folks to go.
They don't want to stay and hear us talk.
No, they don't. They did not blame them.
Yeah, neither do I. I sat out there through a lot of those.
Okay. We welcome nominations to serve as chair of the local planning agency.
I think you're doing a good job. Why don't you just take it?
I make a
Somehow or
motion.
another, I figured.
I would agree.
Go
I would
ahead.
also like to see the doctor take it.
I'll make a motion to have Michael Broom as the chair of the
I'll
local
second.
planning.
Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Nay. The motion has passed. We need a motion for the vice chair.
Yeah.
I make a motion to have Kevin as the vice chair.
And I would second. I think that's great.
All in favor of Kevin being our vice chair?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The motion carries. Well, that was quick enough, at least. So now we go to electing new members.
And Chair, if I may just let you know, there are 3 of the applicants who are present in the audience tonight.
That
Those
would be-
3 are Michael Costello, Dennis Alspa, and Paul Stanek.
Might we hear from them, please?
Good evening.
Good evening to you.
You're doing a great job tonight.
Under pressure.
I actually was recently elected as the chairman for the Board of Adjustments here, and I sat in that seat 3 weeks ago and did my first monologue as well. So I'm a resident of Dunedin. I've lived here for about 8 years. I live at 2772 Challenger Drive. I'm a professional engineer. I do land development for a living, and I wanted to give back to the community, so I thought being on the boards that I typically would present at and look for approvals from is a good opportunity. So that's my background. I have a civil engineering degree from Rutgers. I've been a professional engineer for going on 20 years. And, I look forward to the opportunity to serve on this board as well.
Super.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Who's next?
Good evening. My name is Dennis Alspaugh. I live at 1980 Barcelona Drive for the last 31 years. I am a former member of this board, former vice chair of the Coastal Causeway Committee, and I've been off for 2 years now, I believe. Went through term limits. I enjoyed it immensely. I understand the amount of work that it takes when you receive that packet on Thursday and don't finish with it until Sunday. And I understand the amount of that work. I've been involved with various projects over the years with respect to this board, including Ocean Optics many times, the Gateway Project, Dunedin Commons, Blue Jay. My background was 41 years with the ITT Corporation in various engineering capacities. I was Senior Director of Operations for the past 25 years before I retired in 2012. Love to come back and serve the city again, and that's me. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you. We have one more.
Good evening.
Good
My name is
evening.
Paul Stanek. I live at 2161 Paddock Circle here in Dunedin. I've been a resident since 2008. For those of you that don't know me, I've grown up in this area. My grandparents moved to Ozona in the early 60s, and I've spent the vast majority, 99% of my life, in about a 6 square mile area, including Ozona, Palm Harbor, and Dunedin. Back in the day, when we wanted to go out to a restaurant or go somewhere to eat, Ozona nor Palm Harbor had a restaurant. We had to come to the big city of Dunedin to be able to actually have some food. Along with that, we didn't have a Little League field at all as well. So I played Little League here in Dunedin, as well as my son and now my granddaughter. So they live here as well. My background, I worked in the public sector for over 32 years. I worked for the Department of Health. I worked for this place called the City of Dunedin for 15 years. And then now I work for Tampa Bay Water, which is the regional water supplier. So I want to give back to the community. I want to be back in part of the community. So also attend DCO, and I'm a member of the Chamber of Commerce. So thank you very much for your consideration.
Thanks, Paul. A technical question. At some point there was a rule that you had to have attended one or two meetings?
That is correct.
Okay,
Yes, sir, at least one.
right.
And these three have met that.
Right.
That is correct.
Yes, yes. And do we know if any of the other applicants?
I am familiar with one other applicant who has indeed met that requirement. That would be Jeremy Reynolds. As for the others, I do not have confirmation of their attendance of an LPA meeting.
Very good. Thank you. It's good to have that clear.
And we are making a recommendation on one full-time member of the board and 2 alternates?
That is correct.
Do we have a motion for a permanent member of this board?
Can we not do it all together? Or do you want to separate alternate?
Well,
I mean,
I think we need to
You're
do-
the chair, so you tell me what to do.
So let's do the permanent one.
Okay. I'll make a motion for Paul Stanek to be the permanent regular member.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That motion has passed. Welcome, Paul. Thank you. Yes. And let's do the last two together for Michael and Dennis as alternates. Is there a motion?
I make a motion that Michael and Dennis be alternates to the Land Commission.
I'll second it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Well done. Welcome to you all. We have now a complete board once again. Is there anything else that we need to talk about? I don't think so. Good. So our meeting is adjourned.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, very quickly, sorry, right before you gaveled. I just wanted to let you know we will be meeting again next month. We do have 2 items that will be coming before you.
Very good.
And
Thank you.
what is that date?
That date is April 10th.
April 10th.
Yep, it's always the second Wednesday, right?
Okay.
So
Thank you.
It's in the calendar. It's done.
Good job.
Good job.
All right.
An hour and 16 minutes.
Not too bad.
For the record, Thank you.
Did you get
Yes,
his
sir, I've
notes?
got that.
Got
Thanks
that
so
one?
much.
You've got a copy.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.